content, just asking me about our cats.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
And how they're impacted by CrowdStrike.
By the way, does anyone find that name unbelievably ironic?
Yeah, that's
Yes,
Yes.
great.
it
Wouldn't you be
is.
changing, literally changing the name of your company if you're going to attempt to bounce off of this?
I was making fun of it last week called CloudStrike or CloudStroke, however you want to think of it that way, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised no journalist has like headlighted one of their articles as,
Right.
crowd struck.
Yeah.
It's a crowd bitten by CloudStrike, right? Or
Right.
however you want to look at it.
Chip, just if we could, before we get into today, I'm just curious. You mentioned there's Delta, opening up a class action, a huge lawsuit here. You think this could have material impact on the overall live? I guess what am I trying to say here? This the livelihood of CrowdStrike, the longevity of the company.
So before you joined, Andrew, actually Andy brought it up and we were discussing a little bit. So I've got a couple takes on it. First off, I find it interesting that the lawsuit that Delta is pursuing is against both CrowdStrike and Microsoft. I don't think they're going to get anywhere with Microsoft. Microsoft is going to spend, is going to A, outspend them, and B, Microsoft has a really strong argument that this is not their fault at all. And Microsoft, I don't know if you remember this back in the class action lawsuit days, Microsoft was required by the EU and I think the US to give kernel level access that they didn't want to do. And had they not done that, it would just be like a Mac. Like you guys all know by now, I think I'm a Mac user. Everything runs in a sandbox. You can't pull something like this off and crash a Mac. You can crash the application, but you can't crash the OS. And Microsoft wanted to architect their product the same way, and they were forced not to by regulatory agencies. So
Right.
I don't think it's going to go anywhere with them. I said to Andy that he brought up American, and I said, if I'm on the CrowdStrike legal team, I'm pointing at American and saying, hey, this isn't CrowdStrike created a problem here. We introduced a bug. No argument there. We're just going to assert that for the record, and away we go. But Delta is actually the one responsible because they didn't plan any of their own systems and process engineering, anticipating that they might have a computer outage. American clearly did. United clearly did. I'm trying to remember who else. I think it was Frontier was impacted by this. There are other airlines that were impacted by it, but they weren't out for a week because they had other processes and systems in place to account for this. American didn't lose 500 million in revenue, did they?
And what you're not hearing is like Providence was impacted by this, the hospital organization, and they spent a week recovering, but that's not making the headlines either.
Yeah. But the point is, that's if you're a defense attorney for CrowdStrike, that's the tact you're going to take. That security and system reliability is always it's always a responsibility of both parties.
Agreed.
And we've said that a million times in these calls, and it's been part of the SaaS Alerts ethos from the beginning that we want to help our partners engage their customers better in that responsibility journey. So it's going to be interesting to see how it pans out. The bigger question for me is the class action lawsuit coming from small businesses, and also the lawsuit coming directly from CrowdStrike shareholders going after the board and the executive team. So there's obviously going to be, at the very least, big changes. It's going to cost CrowdStrike a lot of money. It's already cost them a massive amount of money in terms of their business valuation. So do they survive it? I don't know. I'm not a betting kind of guy in general. But I would bet on CrowdStrike surviving this. Maybe it's only a 60-40 piece, but I would bet on CrowdStrike surviving it.
And Chip, how many companies are going to do what Tesla did and say, I'm out of this, we're not using it anymore at all?
Yeah, well, Elon Musk tends to be, and by the way, I'm a pretty big fan. I'm a Tesla driver, not a hater. But he does seem to react stuff for social media and political points. Like he reacts really quickly and makes a decision in the way that most CEOs don't, which is both a great thing for him and also a downside. So yeah, exactly. Impulse on the nose, Chad. Impulse control issue.
Right.
Yeah.
So
So look, as a society, we overreact in the short term and underreact in the long term. And the reality is that all of these customers that were affected, all these companies that were affected, are on contracts. And when it comes time to renew, they'll use us as a chip of some sort to renew, but they will probably renew. And I'm on a board of an MSP that is literally in the process of moving over to CrowdStrike from Sentinel-1. And
Had they deployed it all, Jim? Just curious.
in the process of they were not affected. There were minor disruptions for some of their customers that had already moved over, but it was minor in comparison. And they're moving over from Sentinel-1 and they're saving a significant amount of money. And I don't think this is long term going to affect CrowdStrike. It's just short term pain. And again, this is just as a society, it's because we overreact in the short term and underreact in the long term.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. We'll get into it. There's some really interesting things to talk about if we have time today. I know we got a lot to cover on the SaaS Alerts side, which is always awesome. So let's kick it off here. Let me come up to the top. And Jim, let's, as always, kick it off with some wins of the week. Did you have any on the SaaS Alerts team or side that you can think of as folks out there consider raising their hand and sharing some good news on their side?
I'll kick things off, Andrew. So, some of the folks on our team know that recently Google reached out to us as SaaS Alerts proactively.
Okay.
And said because obviously everyone knows that we're on the Google stack, right? So every time we're adding users, our spend goes up with Google and they see that. So they reached out to us and said that they're so enthusiastic about what we're doing that they're looking for new and different ways to partner with us.
Hey,
Nice.
wonderful.
So that, from our perspective, was a win of the week. We actually have a follow-up call right after this call with them. But with all that being said, I would love to hear how people are catching compromises with SaaS Alerts this week.
Absolutely. Anybody want to raise their hand and give it a go?
I will raise my hand in hopes that I'm not off base on this, but we have a prospect who had hired a consultant to implement all their policies in Microsoft 365's tenant for them, and they did not. They got an email that said, I've implemented your policies, but they had no real way to know what was being done. They find the 365 tenant with all its different admin consoles really complicated. I said, well, I'm pretty certain I can use SaaS Alerts to help me evaluate and see what policies are in place for you and make recommendations from that. And so I'm using it as a diagnostic tool for the policies in addition to finding out what vulnerabilities they have with unexpired links, etc.
What they say about it when you proposed it?
Well, we're rolling it out today. So this is the objective here.
Okay.
So I'm trying to find I'm sorry. Yes, Chip, I'm trying to find other ways to use SaaS Alerts than it was originally intended.
Good. Andy, you seem to do that every week. So I'm not surprised. So are you using, is Fortify the tip of the spear for you?
I'm beginning to find that that's a weakness out there. Besides the security aspect of it, is how do they know what policies they have if it was done for them and they don't relate to it? So I'm believing that adds value, right?
Mm. Yeah, interesting. Good stuff, Andy.
That is good stuff. Policy audit. What else? Or who else? Anyone?
Kind of. Depends how you look at it. I actually just had a compromise just over an hour ago. We also have RocketCyber we are getting the risk detection alerts from RocketCyber, and I just now, probably 2 minutes ago, got my respond rule for the ASN rules that I have set up, and it did flag, but the reports are coming into SaaS Alerts a lot later, so they're not catching them like they were. I don't know if it's us or if it's just Microsoft, but it did catch the compromise, so it's kind of a win.
David, did you have auto remediation actions set up on that respond rule trigger?
It is it comes in and I have to manually do it.
So you have to manually approve it, but you have the action set in the respond rule.
Yes. Yeah, I have a sign out all sessions and block sign in.
Yeah. Give us give us a shout on through support on that particular respond rule. It may be a configuration issue. For instance, if you have it set up to look for things in like an 8-hour window, well, then it's only going to look at things in 8-hour windows or 2-hour windows. So if I recommend most respond rules get set to their look back period be in that 15 minutes to an hour range. But remember, respond rules are looking in chunks of time. When you first turn one on, it looks back. Let's just say it's 15 minutes. It looks back for that first 15 minutes. Then it's going to wait another 15 minutes before it does an evaluation. And now it's going to look back again. So it's not as real time as just coming in into the managed system. It's a completely separate system that's looking at the same data, but it's looking back at it in chunks, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah, mine was set once within 1 hour. I just changed it to 15 minutes.
Yeah. That should definitely help.
And David, to answer your question, you were rhetorically said, is it Microsoft? According to Delta, it is. So
Hey, I'm the first guy to blame Microsoft.
Yeah. Dude, yeah.
But it sounded to me, David, like it might be a minor configuration issue we could help fix. And it also sounds like you don't need a support ticket.
He just did.
Yeah.
And I just want to highlight, David, thank you for bringing that up.
Oh, of course. Thank you.
This is exactly why we have this call, right? So, especially when we can, kind of diagnose things right in the spot. So.
Exactly. No,
Jim,
that's why I'm always here. Love it.
Thank you.
Recipes, Jim. One and the same.
Yeah.
All right.
Exactly.
Do we have any others? Hopefully.
Can I ask one more question to David?
Yeah, of course, Jim.
Sure.
David, since you're a RocketCyber customer also, are you using their integration back into our product?
We are using it from your product to RocketCyber.
Got it. So the event alert that you got from RocketCyber was the SaaS Alerts data feed into RocketCyber, correct?
What? Let me.
Well, that'd be interesting, Chip.
Are there two different integrations?
I'm not seeing anything. It's all RocketCyber. It was the O365 risk detection generic alert that RocketCyber got from Microsoft. So I think it's just not, like, I have seen a delay in the logs coming in to where it won't show the most recent sign-in activity, but it'll show it in Microsoft, but it will not have been in SaaS Alerts yet.
I'm mostly asking because I'm curious. Like, we know they've done the integration, but I actually don't know how they present it. If they present a difference between a SaaS Alerts event that comes through, or they just bundle everything together and call it Microsoft.
Want me to show it to you?
Please.
Maybe not right now.
Yeah.
Later.
I said that.
Yeah.
It usually it probably came in from the Microsoft side. I usually see we use RocketCyber as well with the SaaS Alert integration since December, and usually the Microsoft log that they're integrated as well comes in before the SaaS Alerts one.
Yeah. Enrique, let's hook up and let's connect after, the call and set something up for the next day or two. I'd actually love to see. I've never seen it. So
that works really nice. They're filtering out some stuff that I requested for them to unfilter so I could see it in RocketCyber, some of your all's alerts, and they did that manually. But no, it works great.
Appreciate it. Thanks for that feedback.
All right. Any others? Okay, Jim, you had something you wanted to ask about pro services.
Yes. Thank you, Andrew.
Of course.
So, we talked to a lot of MSPs, and one of the things that I'm picking up and talking to several is a decline in product and specifically professional services revenue as well. And I wanted to ask this group if you're also seeing decline in professional services compared to what you've seen in years past.
It's interesting you say that, Jim. While people,
What do you define as professional services, Jim? Let's make sure we have good taxonomy here.
Oh yeah. So project work, anything outside of the realm of managed services, right?
how about NRR, Jim? Can we just broadly categorize NRR for this conversation?
Yeah, non-monthly recurring revenue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's
NRR trending down.
Yeah.
So with my case, moving people more and more to the cloud, we're seeing an increase in that.
So what, they're migrations?
Yes.
Okay.
Andy, so do you consider, please don't take offense to this, do you consider your customers laggards where maybe industries have gone there already?
Both in manufacturing and healthcare, it is what the difference is that we're able to say now we're able to have you be totally remote and have the same security that you don't have outside of that, and that's that to me is a game changer for a lot of way people do business.
So it's interesting, Jim, because Gary mentioned this stat on the cyber call this week.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a pretty big audience now with like over 650 in TruePeer.
Yeah.
And they are seeing it trending at least for the last a few quarters downward. And, you have to wonder, is it a result of, we had this epic, right, move with the pandemic, tons of security projects, tons of cloud shift projects. Is it just rate of change, right? If you just look at pure economics, is it rate of change that we can't comp, right? Maybe I'll ask that to you and Chip, right? Just from pure economics, it's hard to comp those numbers, over every single quarter.
Yeah. I mean, I have a theory. I have a theory that people that are seeing less project work have already done the migrations.
Yeah.
For people in their recurring customer base to the cloud. And once the migrations are done, and they're in the cloud, there's really nothing for them to do on the professional services side.
Well, we
had business impact analysis.
We got that today for you, Andy. The other thing, Jim, too, is we had that prolific spike in change with cyber insurance, right? The questionnaires drove vast amounts of security controls that regulation didn't even do, right? Cyber insurance drove them.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting, the comments, guys. I don't know if, Andrew and Jim, you're probably not following them along because you're talking almost universally in this group. It seems that the NRR is on the increase right now.
Fantastic. It's
This is a group with a lot of muscle, I think.
Well, let me go in here.
Cast will start showing NRR. I don't think so. Doing this too, but Chad, is that consistent for you? You're doing it. Like how many deals are you doing in NRR on a quarterly basis typically? Like, not to get into your financials.
We're just starting up in terms of we've only been partnered since March, but we got $250,000 this year, and then next summer is going to be more like 280, and that's just with one client. We'll probably have another 2 to 4, and I'm guessing we'll be doing cleanup projects with those too. So that's going to grow quickly. So ask me in next summer, and I'll let you know.
So the window of comparison is short right now. Not to be derogatory, right? It's like you don't have years of data that we're looking at.
No. I'm not the right person to glean info. And also I'm focused specifically on EDU. So the use case is different. Just like Andy said, he liked the healthcare. And I think that all those verticals actually make a big difference in whether orgs decided to do the shift from CapEx to OpEx. subscription-based, whatever, Azure and online hosted SaaS and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not totally sure. Schools are always going to have a lot of infrastructure. So switches at the very least, switches and wireless projects and stuff are still going to be happening. And I think in most cases, it makes sense for them to have on-prem servers still. So just from a money standpoint, none of that stuff is covered under like E-rate, where they would get a at minimum 50% discount, but all the networking stuff is that kind of thing.
Got it. So like Jonathan's comment, Jim seen exactly that. There are still other projects, but the major server migrations are no longer, there.
Steve's is
That's
on compliance as a service. Steve, are you seeing that either in starting to see more in the CMMC space? Like what particular areas, or is it that you're adopting like a vCISO type service and hitting more regulated clients?
Yeah, well, we're just starting on board with the compliance as a service. We're starting small with the FTC safeguards, which covers way more than any SMB would even realize. Like a lot of people fall into that scope. And even with just the most minimal of clients, it uncovers a lot of NRR.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, so that's interesting, Jim. And one thing Gary did say, and we talked about again on the cyber call, was either, Steve, whether it's bringing in a new unit, right, like compliance as a service for you, or RPA, if you're doing automation, those are going to be new areas, right, of NRR and project work if you didn't have that line of business before. Fair?
But once you're in compliance as a service, shouldn't that be turned into MR?
Initially, though, what he's saying is the project works, Jim, to get them, whatever gaps they see in the whatever regulatory framework he's comparing against, in this case, FTC. Mm-hmm. So he's saying that initially he's going to see that bump in NRR because he's got that new CAS service.
Yeah, you got to true them up and get them in compliance, and then the MRR is monitoring and maintaining it.
And one other thing is that compliance as a service is only going to get more intense as we go along, because that's just what nations do, right? Politicians like to add more burden.
Yep.
Not in our country, Andy.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Great. This answered my question.
Awesome. Amy, I know you're kind of a prelude. I'll stop sharing into what Adam and team have a fair amount to share with us, which is really cool.
Yeah, Adam's gonna have to share, and mine coincides with his. So when he's ready, I'll share a link so you guys can get more information on all the cool things Adam's gonna talk about.
All right, I guess it's my turn. Hello, everyone. Couple things exciting happening recently on the Unify front. We recently made a change, and we now support servers inside Unify. I think I got the right screen. Yes, I did. So some of you, if you've used Unify already, probably have already seen this, but we now support servers. So the folks that are running VDI or RDSH boxes that are shared, now we are keying off of those as well. So we're already seeing an uptick in the events capturing servers and the confidence scores being presented for those. So that's good news. The other thing, and it's a little bit of a background piece at this point, but some of the partners who are running N-central may have noticed it already. We've upgraded the back end of Unify to support IPv6. Now that's a little bit of a skating towards the puck situation, in that none of the RMMs natively support IPv6 at this point. So we're a little bit ahead of the game in that respect, but there are some tricks that can be done with PowerShell scripts and custom fields and things like that inside N-central. More importantly, this is laying the groundwork for us to support mobile devices with inside Unify. And when you're on a carrier with your mobile, you are very often being presented an IPv6 address. So you might see it out there, but it's, again, just kind of some foundational stuff behind the scenes at this point. Andy, I see your hand.
My question is around the virtualization or remote desktop services in Azure. How are we able to associate a group of devices to that virtualization?
So we're not doing that per se. What we are doing is pulling the servers into Unify the same way that we have been PCs and devices and things thus far, and then utilizing the same things like the Entra device ID, the IP address, the host name, things like that back to the event as the event is coming in. So we're not really grabbing server clusters or machine groups or anything from Microsoft. This is being pulled in via your RMM. We had just been prior filtering out servers on the way in.
So do you think we could, within an RMM, say these groups of devices have access to this cloud instance?
It's more about account mapping to users.
Yeah.
So
I'm with you. So if
you can do it, you can do a one-to-many server to user account mapping now.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, so we're not that far in depth, Andy, as far as the servers go. This is purely just enhancing the existing Unify functionality so that we can process servers in addition to workstations and laptops. All right.
Okay. Thanks.
So the more exciting thing from our side of the house, though, is along the route of this new little button that will be showing up inside of tenants here in product management speak soon. Right now it is in beta, although I just noticed that we don't have a beta tag on this, so I'm gonna have to do that. It is in beta, and you do have to request it from your account manager for us to turn it on. And the other caveat to this is the events that we receive from Microsoft Defender are very different than the events that we receive as far as account type activity. So this is really a device-based thing, which is new for us. So as much as I'm going to slap a beta on this, I almost want to slap a alpha on it. This is purely, we're not doing anything at this point. Respond is not enabled for Defender, so there's no real downside to this other than potentially getting some new critical events that, as we tune this and we learn more about Defender, need to be tuned down. That said, we are reporting in a few different Defender sources at this point. Defender for Endpoint has really been our focus, although we did sneak in a couple other things as I saw them pop up in our test environments. So for instance, these are some events that I created right before this call. And you can see that we are pulling in from Microsoft Defender here. And in this particular instance, you can see I was testing with incur. And so inside the joint description, the way that we've laid this out, eventually my goal is to be able to trigger respond. So I'm putting in things like the MITRE, I'm putting in the category, and the goal is that you guys can filter based on that. Here's an example of Mimikatz being detected on a device via Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. And in this instance, we do have the threat name, we do have the MITRE, and then also I've provided the URL that you can copy and paste that will bring you directly to the alert inside Microsoft. Right now, we have two different types of alerts that are generated. You'll see the monitoring event here, and then you'll see monitoring info here. And the difference between the two is that when Microsoft hands us the alert, they have provided us a severity rating inside their platform. And if a severity rating is informational from Microsoft, then we're posting it to the info joint type, and that'll come in as a low automatically. Anything that is not informational will come in as critical by default, although you can lower those down the same way that you do other items if that's the case. Any questions? I see chat stuff here. Let's look. I don't know if anybody wants to summarize them for me. Let's see. Andy, we don't need that. Are we able to perform audits of users without Defender deployed? Not yet. So I do have, the direction that I am hoping to head with Defender is that we will have a reporting engine, and we can probably use some of the RMM data potentially to correlate what the endpoint protection is, or whether it's enrolled, or whether it's got the latest definitions. I don't know what the data is there just yet, as well as maybe some Fortify actions to handle some of the management to it as well. But as of right now, my big thing is I just need to get this out into the wild with our partners so that I can see the data that exists beyond the 3 VMs I have and the 5 or 6 threats that I've been generating against those. I just need data, really. Let's see. Are we able to audit Entra ID devices without a Defender reference? So same kind of question. So once I get some real world data and I have the ability to slice and dice it and cut it up and report on it, then we can start figuring out where we go with this integration. But this is tip of the iceberg, very, very first, progress over perfection type of launch here.
I was going to raise my hand to ask the question. I'm going to plant a question. Adam, how do I find out more information about this on August 21st?
Well, I'm glad you gave me the date, because I didn't remember that was the date. But there is a webinar, and we will be doing a bigger launch related to Defender. And I suspect if you looked in the chat screen, you would see the URL to register for that launch webinar.
Your suspicions are correct.
Wow, it's amazing.
Jim, Chip, I have a question. So you're collecting MITRE attack IDs. Do you foresee that being part of SASE report, looking at, attack types, and, the compromise, the way the kill, well, that's more Lockheed, but for lack of a better word, the kill chains that you're seeing in this?
If there's enough data, in 2024 to make it meaningful for the 2025 report, we can definitely include that. It's very easy for us to filter for it. We could look for which MITRE signatures are most common. We could provide that kind of information. I just don't know whether or not we're going to have the data to make that sensible and useful. It depends on how quickly this gets adopted. Our partners are using lots of different EDR packages, and this is our first route down the EDR rabbit hole. There will be more. I can see the smoke coming out of Adam's ears as I say that, by the way.
You took the words out of my mouth. Like, do we know, like, was Defender the choice A chip based on poll data that that being the highest ranking EDR across the customer base?
No, nope. Andrew, I'm sure you've heard me joke in the past, and probably others on the call. SaaS Alerts is a democracy overlaid by a dictatorship, in the sense that we try and do what the partner community really wants, but in the end, Jim and I make decisions based upon, consultation with our engineering team and what we think is best for the business direction long term. Defender is not the most widely used EDR among our partners based upon our own surveys, but it matches in very well with the Defender for 365, for which we already collect a lot of information. And closing the circle, knowing that we're going to be moving down the track steadily with Intune to enhance Unify. These items are all in Adam's sort of toolkit. Adam is our MSP tools division. We really had a long internal debate about what is Defender. Like, do we just slip it in under the regular Microsoft Defender EDR monitoring hood, or is it a separate category? So we actually have done some re-architecting on the back end to create a separate event type category around EDR, because we really view it as for us, it's a big leap we're really changing our mission a little tiny
Yeah,
bit.
yeah, no doubt.
It's not only about SaaS, it's also about EDR, but it's a logical stretch to make because so much of what, and we learned this through Unify, so much of what we do can be in the cloud, and the SaaS aspect can be correlated to what goes on to the device, to the endpoint side. So that's why we made the decision. We have a specific roadmap in mind for which products we're going to tackle in what order. I don't think we've announced what that is yet. We've talked it through internally, but we're looking at all of the major products that our partners use today. I think we'll be reevaluating CrowdStrike because we actually had a lot of people who use CrowdStrike, and I think we're going to have to wait and see what happens there. But I don't know. Is that the full answer to your question? It's not that, and your question was Defender the most popular? And the answer is no, not according to our surveys, but there are other solid business reasons for us to make it first. Primarily, it's tie-in with what used to be called ATP, or now is, Defender 365. The big disadvantage there is you only get it with E3s and E5 licensing. You need that advanced higher licensing for its advanced threat protection.
But I think you'd see E3 across most MSPs that are deploying. But my follow-up, or just
we see very little E3,
really,
by the way. Yeah.
Wow.
Right.
Just comment, and then I'll let Andy ask this question, Chip. Do you see a new category here? Because I was thinking immediately XDR, but this could be SDR, and you guys could create your own type of category of correlative from SaaS to endpoint.
So S for you means SaaS, I assume.
Yeah, why not? We need another Gartner buzzword, so why not?
Yeah, so I would call it ADR, and the A could either stand for account or activity. For me, it's activity, because I think of all of this as, okay, an account is taking an action, whether it's on a device or in the cloud, the account is doing it.
Right.
And that's always what we've wanted to monitor. Our thesis has been that security has shifted specifically from devices, but to a broader category called accounts. Yep. So if you're asking me to name our new Gartner category, it would be account detection and response.
I'd prefer ADD if we can somehow figure out how to do that, Chip.
Yeah.
Right now the moniker that we go under is CDR, cloud detection.
Okay.
Because there's a lot more recognition of that.
Yeah, okay. But Andrew's asking us to create a new one, Jim.
Yeah, that just creates obviously there's a marketing cycle to that don't want to probably invest in. But so
thank you, Jim.
Yes, you're welcome. So 23% of our existing base is on CrowdStrike.
23. Wow, Jim.
Yeah. Anyone want to guess what number one is?
SentinelOne.
Yes. Do you know what the percentage is? Anyone want to give a guess?
58.
42.2.
Anybody else?
62.
I'd say it's right about 50.
Okay, if we're doing Price is Right rules, Andy wins. He's closest to without going over. It's 51%.
Dang.
Where's Microsoft?
Microsoft is, it's funny because people that use a lot of different tools for different situations. So if I remember correctly, Microsoft was like in the 30s on Defender specifically. But
combination of Defender for Windows and Defender Premium.
I have to go back and look specifically. I don't have that survey up, but the last time I looked, it was, pretty remarkable how much traction SentinelOne has got.
Yeah, Enrique, you just you bring up a really good point that we both Adam and I glossed over. This is only talking about Defender Premium. This isn't Defender for Windows. There's no data coming to us from the stock Defender that comes on every Windows device. There's no API to grab that data. This is part of Defender's EDR subscription service sold by MSPs, sold directly to enterprises, when Microsoft does it that way. But it's not You know, you don't walk out of Best Buy, plug this thing in, and SaaS Alerts is going to get data from the local defender.
Shoot, I
Sure,
thought
so
you
that
were
would be Defender Business Premium, and then I'll into the e-licenses.
Adam?
I had ChatGPT tell me, and I don't think the answer is accurate, and I need to update my documentation for sure. I remember hearing E3, but the note that I have here is E5 or Defender for Endpoint Plan 1. So in standard Microsoft fashion, I have no idea what their licensing was.
It's E5. We're not going to have many.
Yeah,
No,
there won't be very many.
May
I'm
make
almost certain this includes E3 or Business Premium with a Defender for Endpoint license as a separate piece. The point is, like everything else that's behind a paywall, but so is Sentinel-1, so is CrowdStrike. Like you're not getting this functionality in a unified API accessible tool without paying for it. This isn't a freebie that comes packaged with Windows.
I was trying to build on Steve Newman's thing here. Microsoft has included Defender in Microsoft 365 Business Premium, which is our space, 250 endpoints or less for $22 a month. You get a whole bunch of capabilities there. But I had a question relates to with Defender, do you see us being able to say or have awareness of what's happening through the RMM interface that something's not right? Maybe it's coming from RocketCyber or from Solutions Granted or some other SOC where we could go back and say, let's turn off the account because of these characteristics happening. And that's what I'm beginning to sense that you're exploring here. And to me, that means someone could be messing around with a device, or there could be a challenge at the RMM level that's being detected that we could have a security come back and say, you know what, we need to shut down some accounts within 365 or Google or, Salesforce. I think that's really a valuable play. And I
We
don't know
agree.
that. Okay.
We think the RocketCyber Solutions Granted of the world can really take advantage of this to enhance their offering, and in fact encourage more SaaS Alerts customers that are smaller in size that may be better managed there, to use this information and take more proactive approaches to security for their services.
And there's another plug for SaaS Alerts managed management, I guess is the way to say that for what starts.
SaaS Alerts management isn't going to reach into your endpoint and do that for you.
No. But the rules could be starting. I mean, we could set up these policies. That's where I was trying to drill down on with SaaS Alerts is if you're getting all this data, if that becomes available to me and respond, I'm able to do quite a lot with that.
Genius, Andy. I'm so glad that you brought that up.
Yeah,
Chip?
I thought I was
Yeah, look, we'll throw as much automation as we possibly can. Adam and I have already talked about it. Adam, is there an endpoint that you can access through Defender that's going to allow you to, pull the network stack on a machine? So far, Adam has said, haven't found it.
There.
If it exists, would we allow for that to be triggered through Respond? Sure, but there's a lot of hurdles to jump over there. Like, it's a whole different kettle of fish when you're talking about using an automation tool like ours to go and do that. So,
Chip, what's amazing is if you bring Fortify into that mix, now you've got policies, you've got feedback coming from the RMM, you've got feedback coming from a SOC like RocketCyber, and you have all this information in the cloud. This becomes a very powerful information set that we could make some decisions with.
Yeah, I mean, one of the use cases I have been leaning on and beating on heavily and waiting for Respond to catch up to me is I want to be able to say something along the lines of an endpoint was infected with a credential harvesting tool, and within an hour of that happening, an MFA failure happened from an unknown device, lock the account down.
Now you've covered both angles of attack, right? Which is kind of neat.
Yep. Looking forward to that day.
You heard this first on SaaS Alerts. August 1, 2024.
Yes.
All right, Adam. Good stuff. Any other pieces you want to share?
No. Thank you, though.
All right. So let me share out what I have here. Enrique just threw some stuff up there for us, I guess, for you, Adam, to take a look at on the different plans. All right. So this past week on the cyber call, Jim, we did we really dug into the insurance side of the CrowdStrike incident for, what would happen as an MSP if you had to remediate, if you had clients that were running it. Really fascinating the answers. So there is the clip of the week that you can access. Here is the full video. If you want to see it, we had Reed Wellock of Fifth Wall, the president of Fifth Wall, on that, as well as Eric Tilds from the legal side of things. So what I wanted to, by the way, the punchline is, if you were an MSP who had to remediate, I don't know, let's call it 50, 100 customers running CrowdStrike, even though it was business interruption, right? It was disruption to your business, and normally as a first party that is covered. This was a third party that caused that business interruption that you as the MSP put in your stack, and therefore no bueno in terms of being covered from an insurance provider for your MSP. Your customers, for their business interruption, could be, but they would have to file that claim to their carrier. Questions on that at a high level? So one of the things, Andy, you said it earlier on business impact, and we're going to be doing a lot more on this. In fact, we're going to have a whole workshop on business impact analysis and assessments. We haven't set a date. It'll probably be within the next 3 to 4 weeks. We're going to do it with Jerry Craig of Intiva. We're going to do it with Brian Blakely and Brian Weeks. But I wanted to share this with you to start to think about this in your own business, because I thought it was really fascinating. And again, always love for you guys to chime in here. It's really a straightforward process in terms of how you look at a BIA, right? We have, what are the critical business processes that are affected? What's the dependencies, recovery time, customer impact, and financial impact? And I have some examples here, and we'll use our own business model as a way to look at this. So let's start things off. And by the way, I might have mentioned this, Jim, and I don't know if I'm being iterative, but because we talked about this for a few weeks on and off, everything from CDK, et cetera. But what we've polled is the majority of MSPs are doing their business continuity plans without a BIA, which means your continuity plan is uninformed. And the data also shows that from MSPs that are involved with a compromise, because we don't know what to bring up first. Everything has to come up first. So those are some data points. So as an MSP, right, let's think about, I just put a few of them here, but what are the business critical processes that we would have to consider in a down situation? So CDK happens to us, right? What are the critical business processes? If you were to, quote unquote, do a BIA in your business, what would happen? What would be the critical business processes that would be affected, that, are critical to maintain and run your organization? So here's a few of them. Any others, Andy?
I was going to say passwords, with IT glue. One of the things I wanted to ask you this is a tool impact adjustment. CrowdStrike is a tool used by MSPs to help manage the endpoint. What other tools have a similar profile that would potentially brick a whole class of devices if we're using it? And should that not be included into a BIA that we do with managed accounts?
Well, again, think about it. You're asking a great question, Andy. It's really your RMM, and we've already seen it. CrowdStrike, in essence, right? Gary, if you listen to the video, the first one, right? He says, felt like a cyber incident, smelled like a cyber incident, tasted like a cyber incident. It wasn't, but it had all the pain, right, of an RMM Buffalo jump, right? Every endpoint offline. right? Sir, if you're running the blue, Windows, you have blue screen of death, you're down. So your point well taken, anything that has in essence C2 to all of your customers and endpoints would be one of those particular areas. And almost what you said, Chip, like what's your backup plan for resilience? Do you have one? Because Delta certainly didn't in this case, right?
And BitLocker keys would be the other piece.
Yep. And there's a whole host of things here that I want you to take. You don't have to answer this here, but I think it's a really important exercise. And like I said, we're going to do this live on a workshop. But Andy, you went right to IT glue. And that's what I was hoping is that when we look at this, we look at process first, right? Because then, as this, if you look at this, it goes, well, what are the dependencies for these processes? And you're right. IT glue is one of the dependencies. So yes, if you can't, if you have one of their critical processes is to be able to have passwords and configurations and right, what are all the dependencies in your business that can't go down, or if they do go down, what's plan B?
What's the order in which they have to come back up?
Which you nailed it, Chip, which is right here, right? That informs, and this is the part that gets missed. If I bring Crystal Air back here or John Strand or anybody in the IR business, unfortunately, the majority of the time and please don't take this as an insult, the majority of time they ask an MSP, your customer's down, what has to come up first? Because the BIA wasn't done, they don't know. So this is, when we talked earlier, Jim, about non-recurring services, and if you think about how can you goose that number, which then drives more NRR, this BIAs fall under the umbrella of vCISO services. That's why like Antiva has really started to really double down into that business. And you probably some of the boards you sit on, right, Jim? Those are large RFPs. You're seeing those vCISO services really be the spear, right, as a wedge into a business. Fair?
Definitely. And one of the things that, I mentioned this to Chip this past week. I mentioned it to Google when I met with them on Monday. The number one dependency, and I think this was obviously highlighted with the CrowdStrike situation, is Microsoft. 92, 94%, whatever it is, of MSPs resell Microsoft and their customers rely on it every single day for almost everything they do.
It's very true. However, if I could just say one thing, Jim, your point's well taken. However, we were on a call and one of the things that came up is in this BIA, the customer said, you can keep email down. You take my phone system offline, I'm dead in the water. So I think, your point is whatever that.
Yeah. But let me just, what I'm sitting here thinking, right, is, and I've told this now to several people, if I'm an MSP today, one of the things that I do for every single one of my customers is I set up at least one Google account for an executive at every single one of my customers. I set it up and I put just baseline data in G Drive. So, because it's not a question of when Microsoft goes down and it has a catastrophic event around 365. If it's when. It's not if, it's when. Yeah, it's not if, it's when. Right?
Yep.
So if that's the case, how can you become the hero to your customer, spin everybody up now in Google Workspace, and they're operating?
It's a great point, Jim.
And it costs you $30 a month. It costs $30 a month for a decent license in Google Workspace to do that.
It's such a complicated question because it also comes down to, all right, if we all I don't know, Amy, maybe you should whip up a poll here real fast. How many people in this call would agree with the statement? It's not if, but when. And I suspect it's a high percentage. And the next question is, for how long? You know, it's one thing.
Hold on, I think I can do this, but we have to wrap up in 2 minutes. I don't know if I have time.
It's not worth it with 2 minutes left.
It's 100% of us would be when.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, whether it was, you know, we've seen time and again, right, that but I think the bigger piece, Jim and Chip, is as MSPs, we need to run these internally and look at our critical business processes and systems. And, you know, if we can do this for ourselves and have some command over this process, that means we can then look at having these conversations with customers, right? And this is really the conversations that you have to look at. You know, okay, so we talked about systems, processes. Well, what's your customer impact if all your stuff's down? If you have a CDK event, which is what I'll close out with, right? So this was a customer to CrowdStrike. Then let's look through the lens of, you know, if you're one of the, you know, again, a cloud PSA, or in this case, a cloud auto dealership dealer solution, you know, the 3 calendar weeks that CDK interrupted that industry, which, Jim, I would argue is very similar in essence to MSPs and a PSA, you know, 15,000 or so running on a cloud, call it Datto Cloud, call it ConnectWise Cloud, call it Halo Cloud, whatever cloud. It's going to be a fairly monumental impact if you don't have a plan in place to your business.
Right. Exactly. Hey, Andrew, I gotta go, but thanks everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
See you next week.
Okay. See everyone next week.
All right, guys.
Okay.
See you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Later.